In session one, we looked at the three financial justification tools: payback period, net present value, and internal rate of return. What I'm going to do now is to apply net present value to a potential product development program. In this program, we consider three things: the costs, that is the capital outlay in terms of people time, staff, their overheads, purchasing, capital investment, plant and machinery, those sorts of things. So all of those are being added together to give us negative cash flow or a cash expenditure in the product development process. We're also considering the income following launch, that is the income profit, and we're looking at the discount rate for a value of 25% return, so much higher now than the 10% that we looked at in session one. I've got strategy A here, and this is assuming that we're going to launch our new product in 21 months. And you can see that on the time, in months, we've got 3 months, 6 months, 9, 12, 15, etc., right down to 48 months. What I used in session one were even years, year 1, year 2, 3, etc. But we may need to be a little finer on our timescales. So here we've got the first time at 3 months, so we're considering a time period in 3-month intervals, and obviously 3 months is a quarter of a year. Excuse me. So the discount factor would be counted at 0.25 years, 6 months 0.5, 9 months 0.75, etc., up to, as I said, 4 years. If we calculate the discount factor then at 25%, we can see that after 3 months the true value of the net cash outflow would be 0.946, and after 6 months 0.894 of the original value. So if we look at the net cash, what we're actually paying or receiving, we can see that that starts to become more negative. After 3 months, minus £25,000. After 6 months, that's an additional £75,000, and then increasing to 110,000. And after a period of time, 21 months, we launched the product, but we've still got a cash flow which is negative. Now that's quite normal, because we're selling low volumes of the product immediately after launch. We're still spending money on advertising, promotion. We're filling up the supply chain to the customer, putting new products in stores, whatever it might be, where they're sold. So that's a negative cash outflow. And then eventually, month 27, it's starting to become positive, increasingly positive, and then starting to go into decline after 4 years, or month 48. Then if we look at the cumulative cash flow, we can see how that adds up. Minus 25, of course, after a quarter or 3 months, and then 75 plus 25, giving us 100 here, 100 plus 110, 210. So we've got the cumulative cash flow, which, as we can see, stays pretty well negative all the way through, and it's only after 4 years that we start to see some positive return. So this isn't generally looking too good. If we look at the present values, that's the multiplication between the discount factor and the net cash, then we see that £25,000 outflow after 3 months has a present value of 24. So these are obviously reduced, and the further that we go into the future, the greater is the reduction. So look, £95,000 in 4 years' time has a present value of only £39,000. If we add up all the net or all the present values and we get the net present value, then you can see that again it's heavily negative and ends up at the end, as we might expect perhaps, with a net present value of minus £141,000. So this isn't too good a program or too good a proposition, although in simple terms it returns a small amount of surplus after 4 years. When we consider the present values, that's quite heavily negative, so clearly nothing like the 25% that we require. So this strategy A doesn't look too favourable. What could we do about that? So if I look at the next example, what about if we launched earlier? We would have to spend the same amount of cash. That's important. So we're spending exactly the same amount of cash but faster. We therefore get to the marketplace quicker. We start to see a cash return faster. Again, I've assumed here exactly the same profile, but we get to our 90,000 rather earlier because we launched earlier, and then we start to slowly go into a decline, and after 48 months we've got £84,000 net cash flow. Cumulatively, again we've got a bit more positive here. The present values, again slightly better, and we see here that the net present value is almost zero, almost. So we'd say, well, this project yields pretty much exactly 25% return, so it's on the minimum that we would expect, and all we've really done is to speed the time to market. We haven't spent any more, we haven't had any greater returns, although for a bit longer, but because we are spending the money quicker, getting a faster return, then we improve the net present value. Still not too good. What can we do about it further? Well, let's go to another example. Say we had strategy C, which was to launch quickly, 15 months rather than 21 again, and increase sales. Is there some way that we could increase sales? If we were able to do so, let's see what happens. So again, exactly the same profile of spend, exactly the same amount of spend. I've increased the income here, and we can see that the cumulative cash is affected accordingly, present values, and then if we look down at the net present value, that's much more healthy. We're looking at clearly more than 25%. Now, of course, you can't just say we'll increase the sales or in fact reduce the development cost. You've got to have a strategy to achieve that. It might be more advertising, which would cost you more, of course. It might be finding some export markets. There needs to be a way that you justify how you're going to achieve that. And you also, of course, have to show how you're going to achieve a faster time to market. Or a further strategy might be to reduce the development cost. How are you going to do that? So although it's easy to build a financial model, we have to have a logic behind what we're doing. Assuming that we have that logic, we could of course show these figures graphically. If we do that, the incremental cash flow, so that's the expenditure and negative, we can see the projects here, project A, project B, project C, and we can see the cash flow. So project A takes quite a long time to get to market and to go positive. Project B, we're spending faster, same amount of overall spend, getting to the marketplace quicker, coming into surplus faster, same level of sales as project A, dipping away a little bit after 48 months, and then project C, faster time to market, increased sales, obviously giving the advantage that we're looking for. So that's the incremental, the normal actual spend. If we look at the cumulative cash flow, again from the tables that we've looked at, you can see again project A just going positive, project B, project C, a better performance. And if we look at the present values, again project A, project B, project C, obviously better, and the net present values where project A was always negative, project B just about zero, and project C a healthy surplus. These are important analysis techniques, and this one I guess is one that we would use quite widely, or these two, but this one in particular, because it's showing us the true cost of investment, the true cost of returns or value of returns, and it allows us, before we go into the product development spend over here, to evaluate what our expectations are. Now you can imagine perhaps that with project C, assuming it was justifiable, there might be some variability. This line of project C is our best estimate. That doesn't mean that we can predict what's going to happen exactly. We know that although this might be our best estimate, the investment costs might be a little less or a little more. And certainly to predict the income that we will generate is very difficult. And it might be that this is variable up and down. So we might actually have, for project C, if that was our chosen strategy, we might say, well, we can be within about 10%, we think. So we could have a line which is slightly less, 10%, and a line which is slightly more, 10%. And similarly, we might say with sales, well, that might be plus and minus 20%. So we might have another line which is pessimistic and a line which is optimistic for sales, perhaps another 20%. Then we could have a spread of lines here which are called our confidence limits. So the best case, of course, would be, based on this strategy C, the less spend and greater return, that would be our best situation, or the worst situation would be increased spend, later to market, and reduced sales. That would be our worst case. So there's three variables here that matter. One is how much are you going to spend, obviously. The second is how quickly are you going to get to market. That's important. And the third is what will be our returns. So those three variables we can play with, but we have to justify them in terms of a strategy to achieve them.